Welcome to today's meeting of the Constitution Committee. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. We've received apologies from Mr. Rushton and Mr. Shepherd, and I welcome Mr. Ashman and Mrs. Richardson, who's attending as their substitutes. So item 1, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of September are taken as read, confirmed and signed. All agreed? Thank you. Item 2, question time. There are none. Item 3, questions asked under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. There are none. Item 4, to advise of any other items which the Chairman has decided to take as urgent. There are none. Item 5, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? Okay, so on to item 6, the review and revision of the Constitution, pages 7 to 24. And Lauren Haslam is joining us online to present the report. So over to you, Lauren.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. First of all, please accept my apologies for not being able to join you in person today. First item, then, the Constitution, as you know, is reviewed annually to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And this report presents the outcome of that review. I'll take you through, if I may, and just highlight the main changes. The first change is a proposal to change the terms of reference for the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. That's really to reflect a change in the National Health Service Act 2006. As you know, previously the Secretary of State was only able to intervene in reconfigurations on receiving a referral from the Council relating either ways to the adequacy of consultation or whether the proposal was in the interest of the health service in the area. That's now changed, and the local authority's power of referral has been removed and replaced with a right to write to the Secretary of State and request a call-in, which the Secretary of State has indicated that they expect only to be used in exceptional circumstances where it's not been possible to reach a local resolution. So that's really the first change, to reflect that statutory change in arrangements. The second significant change is to introduce a new standing order, which would be Standing Order 12 if it progresses, and that is to require that notices of amendments to motions are given in advance to the Chief Exec, and we're proposing 2 days before the meeting. The idea behind this is to ensure that all members have the opportunity to consider amendments before the meeting, and for officers to be able to provide any advice that may be required on the amendment. I'm thinking, I suppose, particularly of the importance of that for any MTFS amendments that are made. But at the same time, not wanting to do anything that might be seen as in any way stifling the democratic process. There is a proposed retention of the ability for the chair of the meeting to waive the requirement in relation to notice. And we're proposing that the notice be served as soon as it's received on the Leader of the Council and the opposition group leaders, and disclosed to all members of Council at 9 a.m. on the day before the meeting. So there's greater visibility and transparency in relation to notices of amendments. The third amendment that I'll highlight relates to the Constitution Committee and Corporate Governance Committee and how they fulfil the functions of receiving statements of account and the annual governance statement. It's proposed that there's a slight change in the arrangement so that the statement of accounts for the Council and for the Pension Fund be presented to the Corporate Governance Committee rather than to this committee for approval, and that the annual governance statement as at present continues to come to this committee. The other change is a revision and tidying up of the terms of reference for the Corporate Governance Committee, which will be considered by the Corporate Governance Committee when it meets later on at the beginning of December. The other amendments I think I would describe more as tidying up rather than anything substantial. So there's just changes to the petition scheme to make them clearer, but no change in the substance. Just updating terminology in relation to health bodies, allowing for a delegation of proper officer functions, and tidying up arrangements in relation to panels, so deleting panels that are no longer operational and formalising a new panel operating in the Director of Environment and Transport area. If the changes are agreed, they will need to be presented to the Council for approval at its next meeting. The second part of the report is to propose that there be a whole review of the Constitution. That's reflecting the opinion offered by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, who examined the Constitution of Birmingham City Council as part of the recent work undertaken in that authority. They've got the same constitution as us, essentially. And the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny were critical of the Constitution, saying it was not very easy to navigate, lacked clarity. So that's obviously something that's of concern to me in my role as a, with responsibility for governance, as I'm sure it will be to this committee. So I want to make sure that the Council's constitution reflects the best practice. So we're proposing that there be a politically balanced 5-member panel to review the constitution, looking at best practice. If the committee is happy with that proposal, we would aim to start that in the new year, with the view to the Constitution revised version updated being presented for approval by the Council in the new municipal year starting in May 2025. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from anybody? I think the main thing would be that on page 8, the amendments about whether that will impact any democratic process. So we're proposing to share any amendments with all members at 9 o'clock the day before a meeting. Is that?
That's right.
But you can put the amendment to officers and they won't do share until the 9 a.m. the day before. Is that right?
Well, shared with the leader and opposition group leaders immediately,
right,
and then with all members at 9 a.m. on the day before the meeting is the proposal.
Any comments on that, James?
I just get clarification that before it was here, this has gone to the group leaders meeting and was approved at that, was it? Is that the case?
There was no comments made at the group leaders meeting.
I think just overall, is to say the full review of the Constitution, I think is timely. I think that would be well thought through, and I think to put a tax and finish group comprising of 5 million would be really welcome. And it'll be a good move to bring that to the start of the next term of this council in May next year.
Robert.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Lee said, having done a similar review in North West Leicestershire, it is actually a very difficult thing to do in getting members who will engage with it. But as soon as you do it, you get a number of members raising questions about why this is being changed in the Constitution and thinking there's some sort of underlying conspiracy. So I think it's really important that the groups choose the right people to go on that committee, because it is incredibly boring to most people, but it's crucial to the well-running of the council. And if it's not done properly, we pay the price in the future, as indeed I think some of the councils who've under special measures have found.
I mean, I have gone to some meetings where the amendment's been tabled on the night and you just can't take it in. You can't, especially if it affects budgets, you just can't deal with it on the day. So no, I think it's right that we have some time given to it to properly understand what the amendments might impact, and then you might get more support for some of the amendments if people are understanding it, because I think we just tend to go against it because we don't understand it and have the time to read it. So I'm happy with this. So I'm happy to move the recommendations in the paragraphs 12A and B. Have I got a seconder? Peter, thank you very much. Okay, on to item 7, the charitable trust fund arrangements, pages 25 to 28. Over to you, Lauren.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You'll know that officers have been working on closing down most of our educational trusts. We've been making good progress on that, and we've now successfully transferred 10 trusts, either to the newly established educational trust fund run by the LRCF or to schools. We're left now with 5 trusts, which are the ones identified in the paper. When the committee met in April, sitting as trustees, the committee agreed a grants policy, and we're trying to make sure, because the timescales for this are not moving at a pace, if I can put it politely, we're under an obligation to manage these 5 trusts whilst this works through the transfer process. So to address that, the trustee or the committee sitting as trustee agreed the grant policy in April. I think perhaps when I drafted that grants policy, it was based on a standard document. I hadn't appreciated that we're likely to get small applications. So we've just had one in for the Kidworth Goodman Fund for £150, a request from a former student for various equipment in relation to his studies. We've met as an officer panel under the grants policy and reviewed it, and it perfectly fits the criteria. So we're more than happy to recommend it. But it just struck me that it wasn't, the process in the grants policy is rather cumbersome in that it has to have this officer panel, then it has to come to the trustees for approval. So I'm seeking, if you're agreeable, to amend the grants policy to allow for a delegation to the officer panel to approve applications up to £1,000 to individual students, reporting back to the committee when it next sits, avoiding sort of the cumbersome process, I think, and keeping the grants policy operating for larger applications or institutional applications, which would have to come before the trustee for approval. So I hope it's not terribly controversial, but I didn't think you would want to be bogged down with sort of applications like this for £150 or £100 here, there and everywhere. If you're comfortable that officers can apply the criteria, which is what we've done in this case, and if you're happy to recommend this one for approval, and the longer term delegation to avoid that sort of small scale issue having to come before the trustee.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with it. Any comments from anybody? Okay, I'll move the recommendations in paragraph 12 of the report. Happy to second, James. Thank you. All agreed? Thank you. As stated previously, I have no other items, so that brings us to the end of the agenda, and I therefore close the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.